Welcome to the Real Estate Show on KMED. It is Saturday, August the 12th of 2017. Pete Belcastro and Joe Brett, the real estate guys, with you here today on KMED. We're both real estate brokers with John L. Scott in Southern Oregon, and we get together with you once a week here on KMED to talk about all sorts of real estate-related issues and topics. There are almost 400 shows now. And you know, we just never run out of interesting guests and topics. And you can go back to realestateshowOregon.com, which is our website, and you can find some great shows there. You know, everything from 1031 exchanges, tiny homes, Airbnbs, building permits, all you name it. I mean, it's there's a lot of stuff that's just since the first of the year, halfway through this year.
I hope you've got a good show lined up next week because you're solo. I'm off for my birthday in the eclipse around that time, so I'll be on special assignment. Probably
good. Real estate ombudsman will be here. How do you solve dispute resolutions in real estate? It's surprising
I'll be in
how much there is.
If anybody wants me to swing up to Salem and try to talk some sense to the folks up there, I do so.
Guy Giles is here. He's the resident mortgage expert from Bank 34 Mortgage. And Guy, here we are. Look at this. We're almost mid-August. How's your summer been? Tell me, since the last time we talked, what have you been doing?
Holy moly. Well, I bought a house this morning.
You did?
So that was, yeah. It's funny.
Well, that's good. Yeah,
I advise people all day long on how to do it and what to do, and don't be scared, and then I do it, and I'm
terrified.
I'm going to have a heart attack all day long.
Did you move up or did you move down, or did you tell me how we classify what you've done?
I've always said if I would have handed my daughter a crack pipe instead of the reins to a horse, I'd be a lot richer man. So we bought a horse property, and so anyway, just to kind of further the barrel racing and maybe a little bit of horse training for her. So
we can say that Guy then is in that category that moved up.
He
increased his value. Increased his value. Before we bring Sal in here, I just want to tell people interest rates. Where are they, Guy, right now here in mid-August? Because it seems like the summer they haven't really changed much back in. Okay.
We got some new inflation data, and the rates are just holding really steady. I mean, we're in the real low fours for a conventional loan. If you have a good down payment and a really good credit score, we're even closer to the 4. The government stuff is in mid to high 3s, and anything under 6% I consider to be a good rate. Of course, I'm old, but and a lot of the younger people have never even experienced bad rates. But honestly, they're about as good as they'll probably ever get.
Well, again, I don't think they're going to go up much really through the end of the year, through next year even. Because so much of the market depends on the prices that we're getting. We're seeing these increases. And, let's face it, May, June, and July were the 3 busiest months in real estate in this area in years. Maybe you have to go back to that pre-recession, as busy as it was this last 3 months.
Oh, yeah. Well, and another thing is a lot of the thing to do with rates. A lot of people, there's a misconception that when the Fed raises rates, I mean, it's an overall indication of where they're going, but it doesn't necessarily raise our rates unless you're talking about the second mortgage. But a lot of it goes down to where are people putting money. The stock market's been really it's been doing great for a long, long time now, and people are probably looking for a little bit of a safe haven as far as where they can put their money and get a good rate over the years in case there's a correction coming at all, which I think we got a pretty good economy. I don't expect it, but, I think people move some money into some longer-term investments.
Still doing a lot of VA loans, still doing people moving here. Tell me where that's coming from again. It's all over.
Mostly VA in California. I got a call from another guy that sold his business. He moved to Nevada to get away from their crazy tax code down there. And now he's in Nevada for 2 years and looking for anything on the river about $2.9 million, and he's paying cash. So he happened in front of me accidentally, but anyway, it's just one of those weird things. They're just moving in. They're just getting the heck out of Cali.
Well, the demand is certainly not slowed down, and what we saw in this last month, again for our listeners, we saw for the first time in years, really, we saw an increase in listings. We're up by 20% in Jackson County alone. So the demand, what it did is that it had a lot of pent-up demand, and so these new listings came on. They were gobbled up pretty fast. Now they're gone, and so we had a 9% rise in value as well. So
California, it's just there. That wonderful dynamic of the golden beaches, the lifestyle, the movie stars, and then once you live there for about 8 or 10 or 12 years, like, where am I going to land now? And that's so good for business for us here in Oregon, and we get to make a lot of new friends.
Well, it certainly is, and it's happening, and it is certainly driving of the market. Sal Esquivel's been in the Oregon Legislature. Sal grew up in Medford. played for the Black Tornado, played football for Fred Spiegelberg. I mean, that's how far Sal goes back.
Solid credential.
And we really kind of got connected with Sal back early in the 90s when he was on the Medford City Council. In fact, Sal was one of those guys, along with Mel Winkleman, and who got TV after what? But you got TV. It was TV when we got TV going.
It was Kurt Bennett and Rob Patridge, myself, Skip Knight.
That was quite a gaggle of counselors, wasn't it?
That was good ratings.
You go back in Medford's days back there. Well, anyway, of course, Sal then went up to Salem, and it was interesting about Sal's time in Salem is since we've been doing our show, he's come on about every year to talk about real estate related issues that go on in Salem that we talk about a little bit on our shows throughout the year, but then he gets right in the middle of them and really finds out what's kind of the pulse or what are people talking about with real estate at that level in Salem, right? And it happens every session that you go there, that's there, right?
It seems like appraisers and realtors, brokers, and mortgage brokers as well, that we're constantly having people trying to tell us how to run our business that have no knowledge of it whatsoever.
Yeah,
it's got me pegged.
True.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, well, but that's really true.
We have to be on guard for that. We have to do a defensive mode every time we go into session. We're on a defensive mode. I, being a broker, am always on the lookout for that. And of course, we have the Oregon Association of Realtors and their lobby. And just to give you an idea, this last session there was about 2,900 bills, and we tracked the association tracked about almost 400.
400 real estate kind of related things.
May have affected.
Yeah, and those remember things that if you buying, selling, renting, investing, those kinds of things, commercial, all of that whole area gamut that covers with it.
And that's why it's so hard for our citizens to keep up with what is happening up there. That's just an incredible load of legislation.
Well, that's just House bills.
Yeah, jeez,
it's just House bills.
That's not Senate bills.
Yeah. The before we get to the economy right now, our state right now, the economy in Jackson County, in Southern Oregon, seems to be booming quite a bit.
I think the economy is booming all over the United States.
All over the country.
Yeah. I mean, it's been quite a change just since the last election of how that started generating a good economic result for the American people.
Yeah, well, it's certainly happening in our area, and people are moving here. We're seeing jobs, and of course, you've got wages, increase of minimum wages and stuff like that that's out there that helps people in some ways. I guess people could argue back and forth. Yeah. It's certainly here.
Now, see, I voted against the raising of the minimum wage, and I'll tell you why. It doesn't matter if your minimum wage is $25 an hour; it's still a minimum wage. Everything else goes up accordingly.
From that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the base. That's the bottom. That's the floor. Yeah. So it doesn't matter where that's at. It really doesn't help the individual that's on the bottom rung.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we talked about on our show during the year was when bills come up and notices go out. And what's the deal always about mortgage interest deduction? Why is that such a big thing? Because I would think that if that ever changed, that the whole real estate market would, I don't know if it would collapse or not, but it would change it drastically, right? So what is the deal with that all the time?
Well, you'd be taking the buying power away from the buyer because they couldn't afford as a good a home as they can get today, because that would not be part of the formula. So you're taking out part of the formula for their affordability, and that's just wrong. And I'm sure you can explain that a little better than I can.
Absolutely. I have people coming in all the time, and it's they've been renting all their lives, and when we're just sitting down doing the whole math on the thing, once you get to that mortgage interest piece, I mean, that really can set you over the edge. And I mean, there's just not a ton of tax deductions for just your regular single person. And if you're buying a house, I mean, it's a nice thing to have, and it definitely could make the difference in you deciding whether or not to buy a house.
It's an incentive factor as well. A lot of homeowners, that's one of the reasons that they don't want to just pay rent anymore. You're going to have a chance to build equity, but you've also got that mortgage interest deduction. That's definitely one of the motivating factors.
Well, and they consider that when they run out your payments to see the affordability of it, to see what your percentages are, because they know that you're going to have a certain amount of money that will be coming back to you as an individual from that interest. So,
how close does that actually come to getting, I don't know, passed or anything, or does it go in committee, or what happens to that type of a bill that's introduced like that, Sal?
Well, that I don't know. I've never introduced a bill like that, but
well, you've seen enough of those.
They come from a fellow by the name of Barnhart. Representative Barnhart.
Phil Barnhart,
Phil
right?
Barnhart, yeah. He's the chair of revenue, and he's all the time looking to get money through taxation some way or another. And this time they were real scrapping because remember Dennis Richardson when he was co-chair of Ways and Means?
Yes, I do.
He told them at that time, be careful because you're going to have to save some money for Obamacare and you're going to have to save some money for PERS.
Yeah.
Well, did neither one. So now the chickens came back to roost this time. So they were short about $1.4 billion. 1.2, 1.4 was what the total was. And they received about $3.4 billion in revenue.
In new revenue.
But
That's still
they
not
wanted to
enough.
maintain this service level instead of cutting back or doing a long-range deduction on costs.
So they're always looking for new revenue streams.
Well,
and real estate's a pretty easy revenue stream to tap into. That's what I think.
That's right.
It's easy to find.
Well, you can't move a house.
No.
You know, you
I can tax it.
That's right. I can tax it.
Yeah.
But see,
I know where you live.
There's a couple things that I think you need to look at. If you're going to raise the revenue in the state of Oregon, you either raise the economy,
Right.
or you take your long-term business approach to things and cut your costs long-term, or you tax. Well, they always skip the first two and go to the third.
Go to the third. Right,
Yeah.
right. And again, that's an easy thing. So mortgage interest deduction, I mean, it did not change.
No,
It's
did
still-
not. We
it's
killed
still
that.
there.
We got that killed in committee.
In committee.
And what happens at the end of that road? The taxes become so high that the workers and the homeowners are pressed to the very limit. Just to
Well, that's
keep,
the thing I
keep
can
their
for-
boats afloat.
That's the thing I can see in the way we do our taxes now, because actually it's a 3% compounding interest. And pretty soon that's just going to keep generating if you think about it.
I call that the 3% drip. And I'm telling you, some of these things you see is 3% and 3% and 3%.
Yeah.
And when you have clients come in from out of state, when you're showing them properties, you talk about taxes, you got to say this thing going to go up by 3% a year. Unless of course you can also raise that locally, but that's still there, isn't it?
Yep.
And it's
there
not
every year.
going
every
to
year.
change. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely true. The property tax deduction. Those two things between mortgage interest deduction, those are the big reasons why you have the American dream. I mean, I would say if you don't have those two things, Guy is not going to be able to make any loans.
Well, that was in
Right?
House Bill 2771, and we phased out. It was to phase out all allowances for itemized deduction of real property taxes for incomes between $50,000 and $125,000 for single taxpayers, and between $100,000 and $250,000 for joint taxpayers. So they're just clipping the people that made $50,000 or more, which a lot of us make $50,000 or more. Would have eliminated the ability to deduct property taxes for single taxpayers making $125,000 or joint taxpayers making
so
$125,000 more.
$125,000.
We killed it in committee.
The other piece of this that I see at my desk all the time is that everybody says, well, let's just go after the big guy. Well, the supposed big guy, by the time you get taxed, you're not making as much money as you think that person is, but they're the ones that are buying the rentals. They're the ones that are coming up with some housing for people. And when you start taking away all the incentive for them to own houses, either they raise the rents or they get rid of those houses. And it's really easy to just say, hey, let's just tax the big guy. But the reality is, and the big guy is just some guy or gal that works really hard and that may have accumulated a couple of rental properties, they're going to raise the rates. I mean, and then you have the housing going up and up and up. And I had a little girl literally crying at my desk 2 days ago. She and her husband both work 2 regular jobs. They make just over $50,000 probably between them. Minimum wage puts you about there, and they're just a little bit above that. I had to look them in the eye and say, there's nothing for you. I honestly, I can't, I'm not going to tell you not to apply. She's actually a kid that I've known since she was probably 5 years old. And with all of the regulation and all of the things that it even costs to build a house, what is it, $80,000 of a new house is just regulation before you ever even buy a piece of land or a brick. I mean, the harder we make it, I mean, is all you're really doing is hurting the little guy. Like I said, it's like if you steal from a supermarket, they're going to raise up the cost of goods to cover theft, and it's the same thing if you start getting rid of all the incentives for people to own houses. Anyway, that was a little bit of a bandwagon, but I see these people all day.
That's the mantra of the party in charge, because the party in charge are always talking about having those corporations pay their fair share. Well, do you think that corporation's going to eat that? No, whatever they're manufacturing or whatever they're selling or whatever they're doing, the cost of it's going to go up.
Pass that on.
And
sure.
so that, in turn, affects the people that they claim to be helping in the first place. And maybe they haven't figured it out, or they figured it out and they're ignoring it. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. But I remember 97. Mm-hmm. Remember they were saying about how corporations in Oregon don't pay taxes. Lowest in the nation, right? Well, if you Google that, corporate taxes, you'll find out there's 5 or 7 states that pay zero.
Yeah.
Corporate taxes. They don't tax their corporations. So how could we be the lowest?
All right. Well, we're talking with Sal Esquivel here and Guy Giles on the Real Estate Show. Got a break coming up here. I got to ask Sal about tiny houses when we come back. You know, they've changed the rules on those, Joe. That might be something of interest to a lot of people as well. Lots to talk about. We're coming right back after this. Real Estate Show rolls on KMED. August the 12th is our date. Pete and Joe, the real estate guys here in the house. Don't forget, you can check out any of our past shows at realestateshoworegon.com. They're also free to watch. And, of course, there's some terrific shows on there in the past. Next week, the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, Ombudsman. This is a big muck guy from the NAR kind of thing. He speaks all over the country, actually. Bruce Eit. Will be here.
Excellent.
And we're going to hear about conflict resolution. He's actually holding 2 days of seminars next week for realtors, so we get a chance to talk with him next week, and it'll be fun to hear his perspective of that conflict resolution. I can't imagine, can you? There would be conflict arising in some sort of real estate transactions. You think about all the thousands of them. I mean, commercial real estate, rents agreements, all sorts of things. And I'm curious as to what he's going to say about that.
That's going to be interesting. Yeah. Thank goodness for realestateshoworegon.com, so I can go back, and if I survive the apocalypse of the eclipse in Oregon,
I can come back and listen to it. Yeah, it's coming up too. Anyway, Sal Esquivel, state representative from Medford, is in the house with us, along with Guy Giles, our resident mortgage expert from Bank 34 Mortgage. Well, as we talk about some of the stuff the legislature has dealt with this last session with Sal, and of course, interest rates looking good. The market is certainly strong right now. People want alternative housing, Sal. I mean, Guy, you know that. We all talk about alternative housing. Not everybody can afford $400,000 new construction. Now, Guy can. You know, he got a new one he just told us about today. Or maybe
Horseplace.
It may be up in that upper luxury market end of things. But either way,
I'm building a lot of it.
Anyway, so here we are at this point. But alternative housing. Do you talk about that, Sal? The legislature, tiny houses. We hear all sorts of things. Affordable housing. What's kind of going on with that there?
You know, I remember one time in Business and Labor that we had a group of people. There must have been 11 of them that were all well paid, over $100,000 and some $1,000 per person. That was about affordable housing. And I thought, gee, we could save a lot of money here if we just put this in one organization.
Well,
we could save about $1 million.
There's a lot of people involved in affordable housing, but that's beyond that. Does the legislature, is there a role in there? Should the legislature, tell people how to do this, or what? Is there a role for that, or
I don't think so. I think the legislature's job is to provide services that you can't find in a phone book. Because when you start competing with the private sector with public money, I think that's wrong. Yep. And when you start dictating to people, and this is the one shortfall we have in any government, probably in any state or anywhere in the United States, you always have people trying to dictate to other people how to run their business, and they don't even know what they don't even know about that business. And it's like we're on the defense all the time with the realtors. We're on the defense all the time with,
restaurant
the plumbers,
owners.
Everyone, the blue-collar workers, the restaurants, everyone. And, it's most unfortunate that we have to do that. I remember when 2008, after 2008, when the crash happened, we had people up there that were trying to get us to manipulate and pass laws against certain loans. And one was a no-doc loan. Well, a no-doc loan isn't for everyone, but it certainly is good for some people. And they wanted to just do away with it. Well, come on now,
Yeah, dude, that's kind of the thing that we're seeing right now. Like I think I mentioned on our last show, now they're automatically on the computer giving you approvals over 50% debt to income ratio a lot of times. And so it's just like, I guess you had somebody in your office the other day talking about a 520 FICO score. 520
score.
There's a reason you have a 520 FICO score.
Yeah.
And, it feels like the start of this thing again. I don't think we're gonna crash like we did before. I really think we have learned some lessons. We're not to that point at all, and I'm hoping. But yeah, there's a time and a place for everything. That doesn't mean you should just open it all up for everybody. I don't know.
Well, I think the government pushed very hard to make sure that everyone was in a house, and that was the real downfall of the whole
Frank
thing.
Dodd.
Again, let me repeat. The government trying to tell people how to run their business when they don't even know what they don't even know.
So we want you to get into a house that you can't afford. Therefore, we'll give you we'll back the loan up, and then you will default on it, as we saw a lot of people do.
And in some cases, they help with the down payment.
They help with alternative housing, though. In terms of tiny homes, we had Sean Maroney from Southern Oregon Tiny Homes with us on the show a few months ago, Sal. And the demand, it seems like, for small spaces, right? So what are these, 20 or 40 by 40? 20 by... I can't remember the size of them. They're different.
40 by 40 would be
40 by 40. No. Those are 400 square feet totals. So what is that? Anyway, the tiny homes question is that, for some people, they do not want to live in large homes. I think when we have, especially as we get older and things like that, Sal, and it seems like the state is holding up a lot of this kind of new thinking about housing because they classify something a certain way. And I know something came up at the end of the legislature about this.
Well, I would like to see us have a code, which we have in the state of Oregon, and just adhere to the code and make sure that all municipalities have the same code. Because right now, there's not two cities in the state of Oregon that have the same building code because they all manipulate it a certain way. I mean, in Jackson County here, you do not have one city that has a building code exactly like the other cities, to my knowledge.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh.
They've all been developed independently.
That's right.
You'd think that they would have them somewhat together since they're, okay.
Well, I mean, there's the basics, but then they add on to it.
Okay.
Where they do this, they do that. But anyway, I'd like to see that. And then as for these small houses, I think they're fine and dandy if people want to do that. But on the other hand, I don't think government should be paying for it. And,
well,
and
the government doesn't have to pay for it.
That's what Portland's contemplating. They're contemplating giving $75,000 for a 400 square foot house in your backyard, and you keep it for 5 years and let a homeless person live in it, and then you get to keep it after 5 years.
That's the prerequisite. You have to let a homeless person stay in the additional dwelling unit, and then you get to and then it's yours after 5 years. I don't know if that would work around here very much. I don't know if that would work. But I'm thinking that why can't we have additional dwelling units off of tiny homes for renters, for mother-in-law kind of cottages or something like that?
Medford.
Yeah, but not like this. They're too expensive. I mean, you got different opportunities, and these aren't classified as that because the current ones because they're on wheels. They got to be on either a foundation or something.
Well, your council has to do is to work on it because code comes into play as well, but they have to just do a variance, I guess, on it, or a conditional use permit. And I think they could do that with their comprehensive plan.
Yeah. One of Joe's favorite topics is septics. He's become quite the septic guy. And I know there was something about the legislature on septics. They've already changed the rules a lot on them. But now what did you end up doing this year?
I don't think we did anything. I think that failed. But they were something about, I can't really remember it because I don't think we voted on the House floor, but it was something to the effect that if you sold a house and it had a septic, that you had to have it certified, you had to have the drain field certified, you had to pump it, you had to have it inspected, all these things. Whereas to me, that's a negotiable item.
Yeah, that's all negotiable.
It's like, okay, here's the septic, Pete. What do you want to do with it?
Right. And as the buyer, then you have right now the option of saying either you want to have it inspected or not,
or whatever you want to do.
The seller does have to pump it. But
they were going to make the seller pay for everything.
Make the seller pay for everything.
So anyway,
interesting. That would have been that would have been a pretty good thing. I didn't hear much about land use issues. Are we over that in our state now, Joe? I mean, did you hear any much of that? I mean, we don't hear much about.
Well, last session, I believe, not this previous session, but the one before that. I think we had one on inclusionary zoning.
Right.
And inclusionary zoning is where a developer brings into a city, say, let's bring 10 acres in. Let's just use that example. It's easy to follow. Then the developer, if the city so desires, will have to make 2 acres of affordable housing at their expense. So it's 20%.
20% into affordable housing. And that would have been a statewide thing, statewide requirement?
But I think they did pass it, but they did give the option to the cities whether they want it. It's permissive, not mandatory.
Okay, and what
would be their definition of affordable housing? I mean, is that under 100,000?
What is affordable housing?
Well,
affordable to me is different than affordable to someone that is homeless or someone that
someone that lives in Portland is different than someone's here as well.
It'd be a huge deterrent to developers who are trying to get residences into downtown Medford, and that kind of deal would not pencil for them.
We got a break coming up here, folks. We got to have a break coming right back. Sal's here, Guy is here, Joe's here as well. The Real Estate Show continues. Got to ask Sal about marijuana. What do they talk about in the legislature there? Hey. Real Estate Show continues here on KMED. August the 12th is our date here. Pete and Joe, the real estate guys in the house, along with Guy Giles from Bank 34 Mortgage and State Representative Sal Esquivel from Medford, who's joined us here following the legislative session. And well, Sal, you're how many years have you served in Salem? You've been there a long time.
I have been in Salem. When I finish up
what
in 2019, it will be 15 years.
15 years. Well, you've certainly served. Well.
And I've never. I was in the majority once, and I was a freshman, and they wouldn't let me do anything. And then I haven't been in the majority since.
And yeah, I remember Sal saying the best legislative session he had was when it was 30-30.
That's right.
And I wish Oregonians would get that in their head, make them do it, because at 30-30 they have to work together. And they did that year, that legislative session.
But this year in Veterans and Emergency Services, we had 4 Republicans and 4 Democrats. It was a complete non-affiliated with your registration type of a committee, and we did not have one dissenting vote.
That's good. I mean, you can't. It
can be done.
Yes, it still can be done at different times. Absolutely, no question. And of course, Sal's not running anymore, so this is the kind of the swan song almost. But even though you go for another year, yes, you got one more session because you got the special session in February. Coming up. Anyway,
5 weeks.
All right. Anyway, we're talking kind of things, the real estate market in the legislature today. And we've learned a lot. It's kind of the backwoods of things in here. Just how crazy the market is, though. The one thing that still concerns me, though, is that the median price in July is now $270,000 in Jackson County, up 9% from a year ago, up 63% from 5 years ago. That's healthy. I mean, I don't want to say it's bad. So just think, if you bought a home last year, you've already made 9.3% equity in that thing. Mm-hmm. And I think I saw a statistic this week, 98% of Oregon homes in our state are above, people have equity in their homes now.
What a turnaround.
98%. What a turnaround that was from a few years ago.
Well, I mean, you have to look at it. You can go rent and let somebody else get the asset and get the payment, or you can go buy a house, and then when it's all said and done, you get the asset out of it instead of someone else.
So someone else, and that's how you build wealth for yourself and your family. And certainly, real estate and having a home is the way to do that.
I'm going to take the equity of my home, get myself a little tiny home where not too many grandkids could fit in, and be good to go.
My mom always said, when you leave the house, we're going to make our house a half bedroom.
That's a good one. I don't want to dwell too much, but how much did the legislature talk about recreational marijuana and the issues that are being out there now that we're just beginning to understand? Because it doesn't seem like much was done. Is that accurate or what?
Well, I think there was a lot of groundwork laid with the OLCC in conjunction with the legislature, and really the best expert you have on this is Carl Wilson out of Grants Pass. Uh-huh. You need to get him on your show because we're just scratching the surface of the repercussions of this ballot measure that we've passed. And if you'll see in your communities, you're seeing more and more grow sites, you're seeing more and more people getting involved in it, and there's a lot of money in it, and I think we're going to have a lot of problems with it. I see that Colorado upped 10% more drunk driving while under the influence
Sure.
than the previous year when they didn't have marijuana. So that's a pretty significant jump.
Well, you're going to see probably.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Well, I don't think it's certainly not going to go away. But Carl would be a good guy to have on here.
Great,
but it's certainly affected real estate. I mean, if you look at even those stats, the median price for rural property now is over $400,000.
Wow.
I mean, I think it continues to go up though. Although it seems like the demand has slowed down because
but
of this.
There's another factor here that we haven't really talked about, and that's water.
Well, yes.
You know, you take a well and you can do what, a half an acre?
Right.
Yeah.
Half
Instead of
acre
legally?
only. Right.
Well, if you've got 5 acres of marijuana, where are you going to get the water?
Well, you either got to have it hauled in, or you have a place that has EFU with irrigation rights,
Right.
and you're getting free water, basically subsidized water, subsidized property taxes on exclusive farm use land. Nobody in the legislature talked about any of that kind of stuff, did they?
No.
Nothing. What do they talk about? They talk about this stupid stuff. Some of the things we talk about here.
Talking about
Instead of that.
taking your interest
Yeah.
deduction
This
away.
is mortgage
Right out of
interest
our
deduction
pocket.
away, and yet we get free water and subsidized water. And the other thing is, in greenhouses, look at the electricity that's being, the power that's being consumed. But no one because you know why, Sal? Because governments are going to be addicted to marijuana money as they are to lottery money, and I think that's the bottom line.
That's true.
It's true, isn't it? It's going to be.
But you know, with the projections and things and so on and so forth with the marijuana money, it pales in comparison compared to that lottery.
Well, but it
That
won't.
lottery
I bet you.
it's over $1 billion.
I know, but over
It's
time,
amazing. Yeah.
over time, I bet you. I bet it's going to catch up. It's going to be bigger than that. I'll bet you. In so many years, we'll see. I don't know. Anyway, before we get out of here and we go, what else you got? That was out there. I mean, appraisers. That was another big issue that we had this year. Appraisers, there aren't any appraisers out there, and it's so difficult to become an appraiser. Did you talk? They talk about that? Any of that kind of stuff?
Actually, we had a little bit on appraisers, and it was a retention of records, so it was pretty minimal stuff. You know, I mean, it's like
it wasn't like I have to be a 2-year appraiser,
Exactly.
an apprentice to become an appraiser, and nobody wants me because they're going to take my job.
we did
that kind
ask
of
the
thing.
federal government that they would look at the criteria for the appraisal field, and
I'm just stunned by the 2,800 bills introduced into the House alone. Do we need 2,800 new laws to govern the state of Oregon?
we had 2,890 some bills introduced in the House.
Yeah, that's staggering to me. Do we need that much government regulation and intervention in
No,
things?
you only had about 800 that passed.
Yeah.
And that's a lot to keep up with in and of itself.
Well, most of them are just no-brainers. They're just housekeeping. A lot of them are that.
The rent
Wording.
bills that came
Oh,
up.
you
The
mean
rent
the
control
bills?
the no cause eviction thing. Was that the biggest kind of issue up there this year?
That was the big one this year.
That was the biggest one, wasn't it?
And of course, it got salted down pretty wet down pretty hard. So I think it did pass, but I think the Senate killed it.
No, you're right. It did not pass.
Yeah,
No,
it
did not
It
pass.
didn't get past Peter Courtney,
Right.
the president of the Senate. He let it sit on his desk until after signing he died, and then it's too late.
And then it was just done.
was done.
But they'll be back again, right? Next session.
I imagine
there's
they
not
will.
going to be something. It's not just going to go away. It's going to be back again.
This was something that the speaker wanted very, very much to have passed, and it was just ludicrous. I mean, it was basically, why would I own something if the government's going to run it?
Yep.
Well, I could just see people just dipping away
Cringe.
and selling their rental properties and turning them into vacation rentals where they can and things like that,
Yeah.
because they don't want to deal with those kinds of things.
Well, I mean, why should it? And it's like the business bills that I see. Why is
Yeah.
the government trying to tell you how to run your business?
well,
I mean, I don't
get that either. But we're out of time and we got to stop. You know, we
They don't
can't
listen
go
to
any
me as
further.
to how to run the government.
No one listens to us about anything.
Well,
Sal,
we don't know how to run the government, let alone the business.
it's always good to talk with Sal. Guy, we'll visit with you also. Guy Giles at Bank 34. Sal Esquivel, thanks a lot. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next Saturday right back here on KMED.
You've been listening to The Real Estate Show on KMED Radio, presented by the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, along with John L. Scott Real Estate of Southern Oregon and Bank 34 Mortgage. For guest us contact information, download our free app, or to watch a past show, visit us online at realestateshoworegon.com. This show is produced by Table Rock Productions. Join us again next weekend for Southern Oregon's one and only real estate show on KMED. And thank you for making the Real Estate Show part of your weekend.